Hi scrapbookers, I'm Trisha Morris at Club Scrap with the Pacific Northwest Club Scrap page kit. I've already got my workspace set up with the accordion pocket file, which helps me stay organized while I'm trimming, the 12-inch Fiskars guillotine paper trimmer, and then of course I've got the collection here out of the bag, as well as my printed instructions. Now you don't need to print your instructions, but if you'd like to have those on hand, this would be a great time to take care of that. And if you're new around here and you're not sure where to find your printed instructions, you will receive an email every month when we process your membership that gives you links to all of these things. So please make sure you don't delete those important emails filled with all the links that you need to complete your projects. Okay, so what I usually start out by doing with my kit is just set aside all the things required to actually finish and embellish our layout so that that's out of the way. We've got some really fun charms this month and a beautiful stencil, gorgeous ribbons, some fun envelopes. And then I take the photo mats and just sort those right away into the pockets where they'll be used. So to find that information, I simply just start looking at the ingredient list and then I'll find those for you. You don't need to worry about it. So let's just find the 3 pine colored photo mats. Now these are trimmed to 4 1/4 by 6 1/4, so that if you want, all you'd need to do is just slap a photo on there without even cropping it. So these 3 pine are used in layouts 1 and 2. So I'll put that in the file labeled 1 and 2. And if you're not using an accordion pocket file quite yet, no worries. Just make sure you have enough space to have 4 piles, 1 for every double page spread. Okay, next we're going to look for the sea blue photo mats. That would be these. These have a beautiful, gorgeous texture on them. So there should be 3 of those. Those go in pocket 3 and 4. And moving along, we'll use 3 of that moss color. We'll put that into pocket 5 and 6. And last but not least, the 3 beautiful sky photo mats. Those go in pockets 7 and 8. Okay, then the next order of business is to take the paper that we have in the kit and sort it according to the order in which it will be trimmed. So right away I'm going to dig down a little bit and find this beautiful textured sea blue plain. I do believe that this does have a preferred side. One side it has a little bit more texture than the other. So it doesn't really matter when you're trimming which texture is facing up, but if you care, just make sure the most textured side is facing up when you adhere it to your project. Okay, next we have the bear print. We'll just use 1 of those. And then we'll also trim 1 of the forest prints. These are so strikingly beautiful. And then if you want to find the pine plain, this is a really deep, it's an almost black colored pine. It's just gorgeous. That's going to be our next sheet. Then I'd like you to find the cut aparts. We will use the one with more feathers on it first. We'll trim that one, and then we'll add the other cut apart with the big hair on it. Finally, we'll sort the papers then into the order we'll be assembling our pages. So our next 2 sheets will be this beautiful moss color. So just grab both of those moss 12 by 12 planes, followed by, how about a bear print? And then another sea blue plain. So that's that textured one. For the next piece, let's find the forest print and then the remaining pine plain. And finally, the last 2 pieces that you have, this gorgeous sky. And I even love how it sort of looks like it has clouds just right in the paper. It's so, so pretty. So that's all the paper. I'm just going to take that entire stack we've built and bring it back around to the top so that our prints are at the top. Our sea blue is right at the very first sheet we'll trim, and that's the order we'll tackle this. So I'm going to turn now to page 2 of my instructions, and this is where we're going to see the first piece that needs to be trimmed. And this is a nice, easy set of cuts. The first trim we'll make will be at 6 inches. And if this is your first time trimming our beautiful paper, just a couple of tips about this trimmer. It has this ridge up here at the top. Always make sure your paper is resting along the top of the ridge. That's a real common mistake I see beginners make, is the paper is not resting up there and then you get a crooked cut. Also, once you find the 6-inch measurement, make sure you're looking at inches and not centimeters. This is the inch mark, is the second row of numbers. Be sure to stabilize on the clear bar to prevent that paper from buckling when that blade comes down. It's a nice hardy work blade here. It is capable of trimming at least 2 sheets of cover weight paper at the same time. So I'm going to stack those two 6x12s and let's cut at 8 and 4. All right, we gather up all of those 4x6s we just created. They should be the same size, and we'll take 2 of them and place them in pocket 1 and 2. 1 of these goes in pocket 3 and 4. 2 of them go in pocket 5 and 6, and the last one goes in pocket 7 and 8. Now we take the next bear print. We're going to work with this right side up. Actually, no, we're going to rotate it so that the bear is in the lower left corner. And let's start by trimming at 8.5. So make sure when you're looking for a 1/2 inch marking, you go to the left to make the paper larger. So 8, 8.25, 8.5. Stabilize on that clear bar. And then slide down to 4 3/4. All right, so we've just successfully sectioned this piece out so we can distribute it over a few things. So this first piece, put that in pocket 1 and 2. And again, if you're new to this whole filing system and you're using the accordion pocket file, when I have a larger piece like this, I place it in that pocket at an angle so I can still see the number on the left. You know, these pockets are only 12 inches wide and so is the paper. That's why that angle is needed. Plus you want to still be able to see your other pockets. Okay, then we can take this next piece, place it horizontally in the trimmer. We'll cut at 11 1/4, 7 1/2, and 3 3/4. So we just made 3 pieces. They're, are they square? Yes, these are square, and they're all used in pocket 5 and 6. And then this last narrower piece, again with the eagle and the fresh air, angle that into pocket 1 and 2. Now for the forest print, I actually used a grid ruler to help me section this out instead of a trimmer. So I'm going to walk you through that process. When I moved the trimmer out of the way, I realized there was this little scrap here. It's not even a scrap. That's used in pocket 1 and 2. So if you found that, that's where that lives. Okay, so this next piece, we're going to separate this by tearing it with the help of a grid ruler. This is a super handy thing. We're going to start out from the left edge by positioning the ruler 2.5 inches from the edge. Now traditionally, like when I was in kindergarten, my teacher taught me you take your ruler and you mark 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, and then you rotate the ruler so you can connect those lines and make sure it's nice and straight. But with the grid ruler, that step isn't necessary. Every bold line running vertically through this ruler, the boldest of all the lines, that marks 1 inch. So this first big bold line here, now my ruler is 1 inch from the edge of the paper. If I slide it to the next one, now it's 2 inches from the edge of the paper. I'm looking for 2.5. So I just split and go to the 2.5 inch mark here. That's right here. So from here to there is 2.5 inches. Stabilize it so it stays level. I'm going to tear upward and toward me. So I just got a nice looking torn edge, and this piece, I'll verify, is 2.5 inches. So as you build confidence in using this ruler, it can be a real time saver. That piece is filed in pocket 3 and 4 if you want to get rid of that right away. And then the next piece is 1.5 inches. So I'm going to do the same thing. Here my ruler is now resting on the 1 inch mark. I'll go halfway to the next inch mark, and here we are at 1.5. Stabilize firmly and pull the paper toward you. Now if you're left-handed, you could just place the whole thing upside down and do it backwards so that you're working with your dominant hand. And I'm just going to set this piece aside for a second. Now this is nice and easy. We're going to make a 3 inch strip. So the whole ruler itself is a total of 3 inches wide. So just make sure you line the edge of the ruler with the edge of the paper. Tear toward you. Okay, so the 3 pieces that remain now that are torn are all going to be placed into pocket 7 and 8. I hope that was clear. I hope that was easy. I hope that made sense. Now I'm going to place my trimmer back to hold up my accordion pocket file, set my ruler aside, and we'll grab this pine plane. So what we're going to do is make a number of cuts at large numbers, and those create tiny pieces. Let me show you. Our first cut will be at 11 3/4. Stabilize. And then that makes a 1/4 of an inch piece. Okay, that's a good trimming practice. Rather than try to cut tiny things with the paper way out over here, keep the bulk of the paper on the base of the trimmer and subtract the desired measurement from your sheet so that you can have a more successful cut. All right, then slide the paper to 11 1/2. And then 11 1/4. So we're continuing making these little pieces. Just let those pieces pile up. Now slide all the way down to 10 1/4. That's not that far. 10 1/4. 9 1/4. Okay, at this point we need to do a rotation. So I'm going to rotate this entire piece and we'll cut at 6 3/4. This whole large piece will be used on layout 7 and 8. Now you have this other rectangle. I'm going to place it. Now this currently measures, let's see, 5 1/4 by 9 1/4. So let's place this horizontally into the trimmer and let's make a number of cuts. Just bear with me here. 9, 6 1/4, 3 1/2. Now rotate this 3 1/2 inch piece so it's horizontal and cut at 4 3/4 and 2 1/2. You made two rectangles that are not the same size. That's by design, but both of them go in pocket 5 and 6. And there's this little green scrap here. File that in pocket 1 and 2. Now you should have two more rectangles that are the same size. We're going to trim these at the same time horizontally at 5 and 2 1/2. So now you have 4 rectangles that are the same size. Take 3 of them and put them in pocket 3 and 4, and the other one goes in 7 and 8. Next we have 2 1 by 12 inch strips. Put both of those in pocket 1 and 2. And then we have these really, really long skinny guys, 3 of them. Put one of them in pocket 5 and 6, and the other 2 in pocket 7 and 8. That will leave you with 1 sort of longer and 2 really skinny little strips. Those are the only scraps for today. How cool is that? Okay, so now I'm turning to page 1 of my instructions, where you will see a miniature version of these beautiful cut aparts with the distribution map. So if you get lost and you don't know where a certain piece will go, your filing instructions are right here, but I will walk you through that step by step. Some of my members, even the ones who have been doing this for a long time, if I'm going too fast for you, there's a little gear button. I think it's on the lower right corner of your screen. Just go ahead and press on the gear button and you can change the speed of this video to a lot slower. Like try 0.75 or even 0.5. That'll slow me way down so that you spend less time stopping and starting the video. I do have a large number of members who I'm probably going way too slow for you, so I apologize. Okay, so you have these little registration marks. I like to print them out each month that are on this sheet. So that tells you where to trim, but I will also tell you, because you're watching the video, I'll tell you what the measurement of the trim should be. So place this piece into the trimmer with this wandering into the heart of the mountains. We find a new world. Put that in, so that's on the far right. And we're going to cut this at around 10 1/2. Because I'm using this style of trimmer, I can see exactly where the blade meets the registration mark, which really helps a lot. Allow those pieces to pile up. We'll file them all at once together when we're done. Now move the paper to 9 3/4, and then again to 9. So make sure you separate those arrows into 2 separate strips. It might be easy to miss that. Next, slide down to 6 3/4. And finally 4 1/4. Rotate, and let's see, we'll just cut this at 6 1/4 and file this larger quote with the human spirit that goes in 3 and 4. Now I'm going to do a little rough cut. We'll end up fussy cutting these little elements, and I don't mind fussy cutting a few little things. I think it really adds a lot to the pages. Let's see, I'm going to separate the little moose here and then separate the two feathers. Okay, but for now I'm not going to like get real into detail. Let's see if we can separate these guys too. But both of these, the hair and the, is that an elk? I think that's an elk. And then this other feather with the dotty top here. All three of these are used in layout 7 and 8. And then the moose is used in 1 and 2. And this other feather is used on layout 3 and 4. Okay. Now, again, following the rule to always have the smallest piece kind of on the far right, place this into the trimmer so my favorite thing is on the far right. And give it a trim at 10.5, 7, and 3.5. Find me where the wild things are. This journaling prompt goes in pocket 3 and 4. This vertical prompt, 1 and 2. This really cool wolf here, 1 and 2. And then my favorite thing, also pocket 1 and 2. I'm just going to pick up the remaining pieces. Let's see, this feather border, 7 and 8. Both arrow strips go in 1 and 2. And then this strip, this final strip, 3 and 4. We have one more sheet of cut aparts to trim, and then our trimming will be over. Again, the feather is the narrowest strip here, so that's going to be on the right, and we'll remove that from the piece first by trimming at 10.5. Then slide down to 9.5. Pretty wide strip here. Trim at 6.5. And this is the last vertical cut right now at 4 1/4. All right, let's rotate. We are going to cut at 8 3/4 and 6 1/4. This larger piece is used in 7 and 8. Now, because I can see the future, I'll just do a little thing here. If you want, you can do this with me. Just take scissors and carefully as you can, cut around the circle of this particular journaling prompt. I ended up really working hard to find the ideal spot for this guy, but I ended up thinking, you know, if I separated that circle, I'd be happier with this. So that's what we're going to do. This is a tip that you would miss if you weren't watching the video. So here you go. Here's your bonus tip of the day. So this guy, he goes in 5 and 6, and so does this piece. But what I'm going to do is just trim as close as I can to the edge of that circle to remove it. I'm at like 1 7/8. But now I just have a little standalone journaling prompt, and I'll place that in 5 and 6. And then this little guy can go in the garbage. And we have this last piece here to cut. The eagle with the journaling prompt is 7 and 8. And then here we have jobs fill your pocket. That's 5 and 6. This next one, but adventures fill your soul, we'll cut at 8 3/4. File the hair in pocket 3 and 4. And adventures fill your soul will join the other half of that quote in pocket 5 and 6. This whole entire piece gets filed in 5 and 6. The goldish colored strip, or moss, if you think you've peaked, find a new mountain. That's 7 and 8, and as well as the feather. That's 7 and 8 as well. Okay, that marks the end of our trimming. And again, we just had those 3 tiny little pine green scraps. And now I'm going to turn all the way to page 4 of my instructions. And remember, your trimmer does hold up your file. So when you lock the blade, grab the file with one hand, pull your trimmer away with the other, and then lay this down on its back. So next we're going to do the stack and slide portion of the workshop, and I do like to cover this every time. I know for a lot of you this is review and you've seen and done this a million times, but just imagine, if you will, your remaining pile of paper is all stacked up, and this moss should be on top. And this is a 12 by 24 area size for a double page spread. Here's your center line of your work surface. So just take the top sheet and slide it over. Okay. Now I have my base for layouts 7 and 8. So I'll take everything out of the pocket here that I have labeled 7 and 8. And then I can consult the image labeled 7 and 8 to figure out where all of these items go. Now, why am I starting with 7 and 8? Well, it's because I want to dry fit everything first, just to kind of place it and figure out where everything goes. If something got misfiled, then I can deal with it before anything's adhered. And this I would still call the concentration portion of the project. But once everything has been placed onto this layout, you can just sit back and enjoy the assembly process without having to worry about what goes where. Okay, so this larger piece I'm going to place vertically along the left edge of this piece. And then I'm going to transition from the print with this narrow little strip. I love the look of that. And then I'm going to add the narrower feather border. I'm just kind of building a little place here on the left. How about we take this large pine green. This is going to serve as an anchor for some focal things, like we have a sky blue mat that will fit right in there. And then, in fact, this little sea blue nests on top of the sky. And we have the larger cut apart sentiment, and all of that should fit really beautifully right there. I'm going to reach for one of these pine envelopes that's going to be placed kind of in this spot. And peeking out of that, these were designed to fit right in there. I'm just going to add, just so it's kind of peeking. It just gives it a nice little look. And then this guy will be trimmed and placed peeking up behind there. Horizontally, then on the left edge, I've got 2 sky blue planes. We'll vertically position this portion of the pine tree print, and then the feather border to the left of that. That looks really nice. Let's see, across the bottom, we're going to take this torn strip. I think this is the 1.5 inch portion of that print, and you can choose to maybe rotate it this way so that you're creating contrast between these 2 colors here. And let's just top that with, actually, I think this narrow pine green strip goes on top of the print, and then right next to this guy, if you think you've peaked. Then we just add this little pine. Once this is trimmed into a circle or an oval, it will tuck behind there, and then you can fussy cut the feather and layer it right on top of that piece. Now, in the instructions, you're going to notice that there's this word, explore. How did that get there? Well, let me show you. So this stencil was included in your kit. I'm also going to be using an ink applicator brush as well as Club Scrap's Spruce ink. This is a newer member of the Club Scrap ink family, and it's one of my favorite colors. So just make sure you load your brush from a well-inked pad. I kind of do that in a circular motion. And then place the stencil on top of the paper, like in the lower left corner. And if you are relatively experienced and confident in your stenciling, you just can go ahead, or you maybe want to take a sheet of scrap paper and just cover the bear, or cover your surrounding work surface so you don't get ink into unwanted areas. I'm just gonna be brave here, take the shortcut, see how it goes. And now I've added the word explore to my area with a little bit of ink on my work surface. Now, over in the lower right corner of our layout, there's also some pine trees that were not printed on that paper. Of course, it's not a printed paper anyway. I'm going to find my little desktop grid paper here and just protect my work area so I can show you how these pine trees get onto the page. Okay, so here is my stencil again. Make sure it's facing the right way. And maybe I'm going to add my trees first, since I have the spruce ink already loaded into the brush. So I'll just reload that a little bit. And since this is going off the edge of my paper, I'm just protecting my work surface. And again, just rub in a circular motion into the space. This will take a lot longer than the circular. And you can go as light or as dark as you want. Oh, that looks really nice. I'm going to add a second tree, maybe a little lower and a little lighter to this area. So just a little less pressure. It's going to be a little softer. I love that look. Okay, now I'm going to grab some earth colored ink. And I'm using the same brush I have a brush reserved mainly just for dark colors. So once I load that pretty good, I don't have to worry about it being too pine. And then I will just kind of overlay the trunk of the tree, and I'm going to lightly go in and add 2 trunks. Very nice. Now I've got some trees on my paper. So that's the cool part about these stencils, is that you can add things not only to this layout, but more layouts to come, and cards or whatever else. You can make some really nice backgrounds with this, and artwork with between the bear and the trees and the text. So I think now is a good time to take a look at what the finished pages actually turned out to be. So I'll show you page 8 first. Here's that explorer in the lower corner. And you can see how this is tucked behind here. I used that same ink applicator brush to just ink the edge of the cut oval. And when you ink something like that that's been cut into a circle or an oval, sometimes it's hard to get it perfect. So by inking the edges, it just covers any cutting errors. And then this piece could have been inked. I didn't do it. It looked really nice, I thought, and I just adhered it, just peeking over that pine rectangle with some foam adhesive circles. Then on page 7, you can see I added this little silver branch. To adhere it, I used Club Scrap's bookbinding glue in a needle tipped applicator. If you're not familiar with it, it looks like this, and I don't scrap without this guy. It really helps even for adhering these little narrow strips. I just adhere this to the paper, then to the edge of the paper on the 12 by 12, I apply a thin line of this bookbinding glue and then attach the strip. So it really helps for those small items, metal items, and fabric items. And this is just a traditional bow tied and adhered to the page. At this point, I'm going to slide page 7 on top of page 8, and then slide the next piece over and stack it on top of that. Here's my center of my workspace, kind of back and reset. And then I'll look at top of page 4, the image for layouts 5 and 6. Of course, you need the items, so I'll take those out of pocket labeled 5 and 6. I think sometimes it's nice if you can just hold the pieces in your hand and then distribute them, sort of like you're dealing out some cards. Okay, so I've got a vertical, I know I'm covering the word nature, don't worry about it. I've got some vertical mats here. And then these horizontal ones, I'm going to place one on an upper. I'm going to tuck one kind of behind, just below the words fresh air. And remember that little half journaling thing that we prepared earlier? I'm going to tuck that sort of behind here. I'm going to show you some neat tricks. I also use one of the metal arrow charms just to draw the eye to that spot on the page so that you can read what you write about whatever you're scrapbooking. Then across the top, I've got some of these 3 3/4 inch squares. And because we trim them to 3 3/4, you see how they distribute perfectly across the space with a nice margin all the way around. I tend to use my grid ruler to help center those. So what I do is place my grid ruler on the paper so that the zero's in the center. I've got a 6 on the left and the right. And then I'll align this one, and the ends should each measure 1 7/8 on each side. And then I separate them by a 1.5 squares or a 1.5 cubes on the ruler. And that gives me the perfect separation. So a 1.5 cubes here, 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 and here. And it really looks nice and professional. Nothing's glued downhill when you have this all assembled. So then I'll place a separator, just like I did on that other page, that narrow pine green strip, so I can add this, create some contrast and some visual anchoring for this beautiful border strip. Then a horizontal mat. Now remember when we cut those 2 irregular size rectangles, those happen to nest perfectly with these guys. So Jobs Fill Your Pocket is going to be attached first. Then we have the circular mousse, which will be tucked kind of behind here after you ink the edges with maybe some earth ink. He can even be resting on top of this border a little bit. And then if you tie some ribbon around this piece and place it here. Lastly, with your bookbinding glue, you can attach and tuck this sort of behind here. And that's going to look really, just a nice little spot with the ribbon. Now, I told you that I did some crazy stuff on this right page. I think maybe since I know there's a lot of you, there are many of you joining us for the first time. So if I grab my Club Scrap cutting mat, I do use this quite a bit, and I'm going to give you an overview of how I put the eagle from the background into the foreground of this layout. I started by taking the photo mat and placing it kind of where I know I want it to be, which, let's see, right about here is where I want to place this. Now this huge eagle here is completely obscured by the photo mat. So I'm going to take a pencil and carefully mark right where the edge of the photo mat meets the edge of that image above and below on the top and the bottom of the eagle. Okay, then get rid of your photo mats for now, and I'll take a craft knife, or I would call it like a pen knife, not a utility knife. And we call it a pen knife, we hold it like a pen, okay? So I'm going to begin by cutting along the edge of the eagle. I started right where that pencil mark was located, and I'm carefully making my way around the eagle head here. And you always want to try to work in a comfortable position, because I'm filming and trying to show this to you. I would never hold my pen like this. I'm going to rotate this whole thing so that I'm working comfortably. Just like if you were, you know, just a kindergartner learning how to hold a pen or a crayon for the first time, you want them to be comfortable holding it. And that's critical to being successful with a detailed job like this. So I'm just going to go around every little piece of this wing, one side at a time. Then when you're finished, kind of do a double check to make sure you have all of the pieces disconnected so that that eagle can fly free. Okay, so let me rotate this back. I'll get rid of my cutting mat for now. And with that work done, remember those two lines we made earlier? I can even go back and just erase those. Just if you do, make sure that you have a eraser that's not dirty, or it will leave a black mark that will be even more annoying than the pencil marks. Look at that. So the mat literally fits exactly where we wanted it to be, but now the eagle's in front. This would be an awesome spot for a landscape view, maybe a sunset, maybe a mountain silhouette, maybe a little skier strategically placed on the picture. So this is going to be beautiful. I did the same trick with the bear over here in the corner. And I will show you now how this came together on the final piece. So the bear, I just cut along the face after I marked the position of this photo mat where I wanted it to live. And then this just slid underneath there and tucked in so nicely. From the back side, you can see where those cuts were made, both here for the bear and then for the eagle. It's not that difficult if you can just be proficient somewhat with your pen knife. And all that does is requires practice and patience. Take your time with this. You'll get better and better at it. To finish off the layout, I also added some of the trees just lightly in the background behind the fresh air. And I think that does a nice job of balancing this, the lightness of this page, and then the weight of the two other elements. It kind of adds that third element to the layout. For page 5, you can see I just took the canvas ribbon that came in your kit, and instead of tying a bow, I just tied a knot into the ribbon. And that worked really well for this, I think. So I just made a knot. And then trimmed it so that the tails could be tucked behind the nested cut apart. Very easy, quick, and attractive, plus it's not very lumpy, which I love as well. All right, let's move on to the next pair of pages. So I slid this over, and now I've got the base for layout 3 and 4 in front of me. I'm consulting the image for 3 and 4, and we empty the pocket for 3 and 4 as we continue to work our way backwards to the first page. Now on this layout, I've got the portion of this print. I like to spread it out, so I usually keep one of the prints in the collection whole, and the other I trim so that I can incorporate the print into 2 additional pages, which is kind of cool. And you'll notice there's something on top of this print here, and that is a piece of this absolutely gorgeous velvet. I chose the velvet ribbon for this collection because I just thought it reminded me of the forest, of the texture, and just the richness of these gorgeous forests that we are blessed to have in our country. So that's why that's there, my friends. Okay, then we have this beautiful cut apart, and you have 2 sizes of photo mats in your kit. Make sure that the largest one is placed, and it should be the same height as this one, and then the smallest one gets tucked horizontally on this side. 2 more horizontal sea blue, and then this border kind of sectioning that off. Then you've got the hair cut apart, and 3 of these horizontal rectangles. The 4th one was on page 8, I think. Those are they vertically placed? I can't remember. They're vertical because the height of the 3 vertical pieces equals the height of the hair, which is kind of cool. Now, I took an envelope and kind of stuffed that in it so it's sticking out. You can still read, no problem. I used a little canvas ribbon and finish it off with another one of these silver leaf charms adhered with bookbinding glue. And then the feather gets fussy cut and then placed on top of this, sort of like it's falling out of the sky. It looks really, really cool. So I'll show you on the finished page, and I attached that with foam adhesive circles. So here we have layout 4 completed. And to finish this one, I added a simple silver deer charm. Again, I adhere that with bookbinding glue, and you just can't ask for a better adhesive for metal on paper. It just holds it where you put it, which I absolutely love. I can trust it. And then we also have the finished page 3. There's my falling feather. I think the foam adhesive here really helps it pop. I want to show you those. We have 2 types of foam adhesive circles. We have the larger discs and then the smaller ones. They both have little tabs so that when you're applying adhesive to the back of something, you don't have to like spend a lot of time trying to find the edge. You just pull it by the tab and peel it away. And even so, I still grab a tweezer. If I'm working with a lot of foam adhesive applications, I just grab a tweezers so I can just pull it and then grab it and go. It goes really, really quick. And you know, I'm all about efficiency. So that's what I use when I'm adding my popped items. The other thing I love about these particular foam adhesive circles is that they're not really, they're pretty still low profile, which makes it nice for mailing cards and just, it's adding dimension, but not more than you need. Okay, so now we're gonna do a stack and slide again. So I'm gonna slide this, stack it on top of this, and now we are down to the base papers for layouts 1 and 2. We're already here. I did quite a bit of stenciling, but since I've shown you how the stenciling works, I think you'll be fine to recreate what I did. We also have just the remaining items left in pocket 1 and 2, so let's get those out of there. We have those big strips, again, where I trimmed them from a print, but some elements of the print are on a different layout. Letting you on to all my tricks. Okay, so let's take these larger pieces and put them in place first. At the top on the left, we've added the fresh air. I did some stenciling here, added the trees with the spruce ink in this area. Then we'll separate our space with this dark pine and then nest that with the arrows. Then we've got 3 pine colored mats. So one is going to sit on top of the nested border just below the fresh air, and one more but beneath that, and then you'll still have room to stencil the word explore down at the bottom of this area. Some trees stenciled on the left with their tree trunks, and right below this we've got this print and this pine plane. So look at how they nest perfectly. And on top of that you can add a charm. Okay, I did some stenciling on this one too. I got a little stencil happy. Added some trees just below the nature, and we're going to reflect what we did on page 1 over on page 2 by nesting the arrows onto a pine green strip. Here I stapled some ribbon to the top of this little quote and added it right by the eagle, which is kind of cool. 2 of the smaller vertical mats in this upper left, the all naturel, and you can take the other arrow charm and mimic what's happening. I did it facing this way, below the words all natural. And then our final pine green envelope. This, I took some of this absolutely stunning ribbon, and there's no way you can appreciate this beautiful ribbon without actually holding it in your hand. It's extremely soft. It has some good heft to it. And so I just wrapped it around the envelope and tied it in a knot. I wrapped it all the way around. There's plenty of this ribbon to go around for what we're using it for. So to finish this embellishment, I had the wolf sort of peeking out just about that much. Then the oval cut moose, inked edges and sitting behind it with the ribbon attached. And then lastly, we have a silver wolf charm that I added to the lower right corner. And I did my little cut apart trick where I made room to keep the bear in the foreground. So I'll show you how that turned out. So here is that lower right corner embellishment collage. So there's my ribbon tied fully around the envelope with that him peeking out. My little moose, the charm attached again with our trusty bookbinding glue. You can see how I cut around the face of the bear. Oh, it's on the back of this piece. You can't see it from the other side, but that's tucked behind there using the same exact little trick I showed you with the eagle. And then here you have the trunk and the pine and also the bear. He kind of got a lot of really cool texture. That stencil has so much potential. And then here is page 1. Again, more trees here, the word explore, some more trees there. Pop dotted this final quote to give it a little dimension. And that looks really fabulous. Well, I can think of about 1,000 things I have in my stash already that could scrapbook beautifully onto this set. If you chose not to make the pages, but maybe you wanted to make one of our cool projects, we have a lot of instructions out there to help you transform any page kit into a number of different really cool projects. Whatever you make with this, make sure you share your finished layouts on our Facebook group. We love to just encourage one another, share our ideas, share what we finish with these layouts. Have you been on a cruise to Alaska recently? Wow, this would be absolutely fabulous for that as well. Now, if you like this Pacific Northwest collection, come and join me for the Pacific Northwest card tutorial. We have a beautiful collection this month, and I can't wait to show you the 3 unique card structures we'll make for a total of 12 cards. Meet me over there.